Hello, everyone. Today, my name is John Kupcinski. I'm a director of information security transformation at Freddie Mac. Today, we're going to be talking about a new path to better managing information security, or better put, how to be able to transform an information security portfolio from project to product. One of the things that I need to be able to note here up front is that all the views expressed as part of this presentation are mine only and do not reflect the position of my employer. So again, my name is John Kupcinski. I've been in the information security field for the better part of 2 decades, managing a range of information security projects, portfolios, and initiatives. So again, today what we're going to be able to do is we're going to talk about defining the problem. So where are the current issues with respect to managing information security transformation areas? Let's talk about how to be able to solve for that problem in terms of providing a conceptual model for information security products, and also some of the preconditions for entry, for preconditions and entry criteria for moving towards this transformation model of moving from project to product. Some of the key takeaways that I'm hoping that we can take as part of this journey together today is to be able to understand the role of information security and the frameworks, that these frameworks can play in terms of organizing this work, understanding the linkages between maturity targets and risk remediation, and also what kind of agile principles can be leveraged as part of organizations within their information security programs. There's a lot here. We're going to go fairly quickly, and obviously we'll have an opportunity for Q&A at the end of this. But I want to be able to state up front is that we can fill a book with the amount of information that is part of this talk today, and so there are going to be some things that I'm just not going to be able to talk about today, but we can obviously have follow-up conversations as it relates to that. So defining the problem. So managing information security's changing demand. So one of the things that I've seen, obviously, over the course of my tenure within the information security field is that that initiatives tend to get planned for on an annual basis, but the information security portfolio is a dynamic and changing environment. So innovation within IT continues to be able to push the boundary. And so as we look at emerging IT trends, whether they be compliance frameworks like GDPR, CCPA, CNMC, we've got other parts of the business that are toying with areas of artificial intelligence and machine learning. We've got IoT is obviously emerging as a major investment area within multiple areas of industry. RPA is obviously playing a big role within that, edge computing, blockchain, multi-cloud environments, and to be able to abstract the application across multiple cloud computing environments and also on-prem are also things that we need to be able to take into consideration, and also have various areas of information security inflection points. That's also compounded, obviously, with the amount of technical debt. So I've got so over the course of this conversation, I'm going to reference a couple pieces of literature, and so so in this case, Gene Kim and the Phoenix Project. If you haven't read it, please read it. It is a great book in terms of trying to be able to conceptualize some of the challenges with respect to innovating within the broader computing environment. And so technical debt has and always will be a challenge with respect to paying it down. And so technical debt, as I define it, includes vulnerabilities, non-compliance, end-of-life applications, entitlement drift, or orphan assets. Again, these are all the things that drag our organizations down, and things that we need to be able to make sure that we address. Again, this technical debt is like financial debt and compounds and with compounding interest over time. And if we don't pay down that technical debt, every calorie of the organization is going to be paid towards interest in terms of kind of unplanned work. And so again, part of the role that we have within information security delivery and transformation is to be able to manage that unplanned demand as quickly and closely as possible. And if we can't manage that, then we can't obviously get to the fun things like building new security capabilities and enhancing kind of that defense in depth. This is also compounded, again, kind of rounding out kind of this trifecta or triangle associated with the managing the information security changing demand is the evolving cyber risk. You can't necessarily see it on the slide, so apologies for that, but But what this area in terms of evolving cyber risk is really meant to be able to say is that there is a changing dynamic with respect to the adversaries that we look to be able to protect our organizations against. And so right now, there is a preponderance of ransomware attacks that is permeating the media. If we went back a couple of years, there were issues that were of different size and scale and sort, with respect to Bitcoin mining or business email compromise or so on and so forth. And these are all still main issues. But again, as the adversary adjusts kind of their tools and techniques and procedures, we also need to be able to dynamically address kind of our defense and depth measures to be able to tackle some of these the changing paradigm with protecting our environment. So defining the problem. So why is this so hard? So why is it difficult to be able to manage information security capacity and throughput? Again, everything comes down to demand and capacity. So what is the demand and what is the capacity in order to be able to affect change? So as another book that I'll reference here, inspired Silicon Valley by Marty Kagan. This is this talk is drawing heavily on some of the concepts and areas that we bring up as a part of this conversation today. So when you deal with the waterfall kind of traditional model for planning out projects and ideas, there's always kind of a question of, so what is the prioritization of ideas? So what risk are we looking to be able to reduce? How are we trying? What does secure look like? How much money and time will it cost? What is the risk of not doing this thing? How secure, how safe will these efforts make us at the end of the time? Again, there is changing dimensions associated with how individuals within the organization see information security and how it's viewed. Again, if it's viewed as an IT issue, if it's viewed as a business issue, if it's viewed as a system or as a bit and byte issue. And so again, those ideas diverge based upon the specific audience that's at hand. Again, one of the other things that I've also seen is that there is an over-focus of tool and technology implementation for business cases versus kind of the anchor capability or problem statement. So again, we focus too much on that product. And so what does that product roadmap look like? What does that technology, what does that tool give us? Versus what are the anchor? What's the problem statement that we're trying to be able to solve? How do we address kind of that? What does done look like? What does good enough look like from a capability and problem statement? Also, again, as we look at kind of the roadmap and planning of prioritization, we look at a prioritized list of features versus strategic planning and long-term goals, and for example, objectives and key results. So we're looking at individual features that are abstracted away from the ultimate problem statement that we're trying to be able to solve. And so we need to be able to get back over here to the, what is the strategic planning, what are the short-term goals associated with managing information security, and how does that translate to the broader business objectives? And then the lack of connectivity to issues. Again, this is one of the things that I've seen over the course of my career, is that that we can't think that information security is just a set it and forget it type of activity. And so it's important to be able to think comprehensively and completely in terms of security projects to be able to understand the permutations across the entire domain. Again, as you deploy, whether it be a WAF system, whether it be a new detection, whether it be identity access management or vulnerability management system. So these things have intersections and inflection points with other parts of the organization. And even other security tools and capabilities. And so we need to make sure that when we deploy these technologies and we deploy these tools, again, going back over to the capability and problem statement, and also back up to the idea, what are we trying to do ultimately in terms of securing the environment? How do we ensure that these projects don't become orphans and then ultimately wither and die on the vine? And then finally, the inability and inefficient to be able to pivot for out-of-band requests. Again, this is one of the things that as we look at the annual planning exercise, The things that we plan for at the end of our fiscal year are not necessarily the things that we're going to be executing as a part of Q3 or Q4. Again, based upon the previous slide. Again, things change over the course of the year, and so our portfolio needs to be agile enough to be able to address the changing demands associated with the business, associated with remediating technical debt, and also associated with remediating or addressing the emerging threat associated with protecting our environment. Again, things change, and we need to make sure that our organization, from a delivery perspective, is agile enough in order to be able to address kind of that form and function. From information security projects to products. So this is not necessarily a new or unique function, within the broader delivery organization. So again, what we're talking about here is really how to be able to take keys associated with software companies, associated with digital initiatives, can be organized in many ways. Look at companies that have built successful software organizations for rapidly learning and addressing quickly evolving environments. By their nature, these organizations have focused on evolving business models and disruption. So we need to be ready for disruption, because ultimately, inherently within the information security construct, there is significant commoditization as well. There is disruption. Focusing on companies and taking cues from companies like Bosch and Caterpillar and Harrier and Tesla and Volvo that recognize delivering business initiatives at scale require capabilities to be able to address the continuous product and service development and enhancements. And looking at security and privacy management and data and event collection and real-time and analytics. So we need to be able to be agile enough to be able to address for that rapidly changing demand associated with keeping up with the environment or keeping up with the organization. So as innovation continues to be able to propel the organization forward, security needs to be agile enough in order to be able to keep up with the not just the innovation, but also the adversaries as well. So number two, adjust the investment models. So this is one of the most important things that I think that we need to be able to talk about. So moving away from the annual funding construct to be able to say, here is very specifically what you're going to get for your money, and developing and deploying security products and services, it's usually considered an investment and accepted, and it is accepted that the team will operate at a deficit to be able to address, again, legacy InfoSec technical debt remediation. So again, we need to be able to address the technical debt before we move on to building and iterating kind of the advanced capabilities associated with information security. But ultimately, we need to it takes a while. It takes a while to be able to perform cultural or transformation changes, and so typical programs will see kind of 3 to 5 years in terms of transition to address the target state. And sometimes it can take even longer, but this obviously calls for a mix of funding sources in addition to corporate allocations. We need to be able to make sure that we address not just the annual funding, but also iterative funding over the course of the year to be able to address the unplanned demand, to be able to address the things that are coming up through completion of projects and initiatives, to ensure that we're not deploying and delivering on orphan capabilities and so on and so forth. But also the position of product management as core to everything digital. So one of the things, again, going back over to the book that I referenced in the previous slide, is that there really is a change in paradigm associated with how to be able to transform the project management function into product management function. So that really is to address the functionality associated with allowing the individual to move from kind of a mercenary function with respect to delivering on cost, schedule, and performance to missionary, to be able to say, I am a delivering on this capability, and I take some ownership associated with not just delivering on cost, schedule, performance, but also on the additional capability maturation to be able to understand that, once a project is done or once an initiative is done, is that there is still more work to be done. There's still more work to be able to be accomplished. And so it's really important to be able to set the tone for importance of the InfoSec product management as a driver for successful growth and scale. When new offerings fail, from an information security perspective, it's mostly due to either poor requirements or the capable project management discipline. It needs to be an efficient way to be able to improve product success and drive sustainable growth. To fulfill this, it's important to be able to equip product managers with a clear vision and a strategy for both short-term as well as long-term future. Again, kind of moving from mercenary to missionary to be able to say, here's what the ultimate vision of this capability is. Again, kind of moving away from just measuring cost, schedule, performance. And then secondly, the establishment of a set of specific measurable goals that are both desirable and achievable. Again, think SMART: specific, measurable, time-bound, and achievable. The InfoSec initiatives can have the potential to be able to create new engines of growth, again, to ensure the organizational survival from a defense and depth perspective. Perspective. So how do we organize this? So again, there are new things that are popping up in the news every single day. There are new threat vectors. There are new innovative areas that the organization is trying to drive through. So how do you organize this work? So what I'm going to do over the next several slides is to be able to talk about one thought in terms of organizing this work. So I'm a fan of NIST CSF, but you can also use ISO, you can also use CIS, or you can also use Financial Services Sector Cybersecurity Profile. So any of these are fine. So, but again, what these do is that these provide a framework for organizing work, and they can help you define, again, products and product groupings. And don't think about products in terms of technologies and tools, but again, think of them in terms of how they anchor into specific capabilities. So, and again, as you align to a cybersecurity framework for delivering the functionalities and features, it'll also help with the facilitating the target state and risk appetite, but it'll also be able to help you allow for the bucketing of specific work. So again, as you look at work that has to happen within a specific area, whether it be within continuous monitoring or incident response or forensics or protective technology or data security or risk assessment or vulnerability management, there is obviously different colors of money that sometimes these areas get programmed in, and whether it's initiative or core or audit or keep the lights on or change. Again, it's work. And so what this allows us to be able to do is to be able to bucket the work, and then obviously we can figure out how the allocations of money happens on the back end. This is supportive of the budgeting process and also really supports also the cost of ownership. And so at the end of the day, if we bucket into these cybersecurity frameworks, we can say very specifically, okay, what is the cost for detection within the organization? What is the cost for response and for recovery and so on and so forth? So moving forward from the conceptual view, again, tying back into to the CSF. Over on the left-hand side, we have the CSF broken down by identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And again, the categories are asset management, business environment, governance, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to read all of these, but again, figure out what works for your organization. Again, each one of these categories are tied back over to control frameworks, and so those control frameworks can identify specific ownership associated with, access to certification or password complexity or, CMDB or vulnerability management. And so again, as you look at the categories and look to be able to productize your information security portfolio, you can start to be able to build out what that product roadmap looks like. And you can obviously, one of the most important things that you can do within this construct is also make sure that you assign ownership. And so as you're looking at areas that may require response across the portfolio, for example, ransomware would have areas where you will want to be able to engage the identify and the protect and the detect and respond and recover areas. There's an opportunity to be able to ensure that you've got visibility and transparency all the way up and down the value chain. So, and then moving over here to the right hand side, so you've got the conceptual operating model. And so really what this is talking about here is that you have your services and you have your products. And so again, dependent upon how you organize your organization with a, with whatever products that you're looking, again, abstracted above technology and tools. It's really important to be able to understand the business units. And so ultimately, at the end of the day, you want to be able to make sure that the business is engaged, and each business unit may have different requirements to be able to support the maturation of those particular products. And this is really where, again, as you're looking at, if your organization has a BISO, Business Information Security Officer, model, this is where that business unit support can potentially come from. And so engage the BISO, and those BISOs can help with organizing kind of that work and to be able to ensure the appropriate adoption and managing. Again, this all goes back over to demand and capacity. So where does that demand get plugged in and at, and how does that capacity get managed in terms of development and maturation of capability? So now we get to the fun part. So defining target state maturity. So now that you have your current state and you've defined your products and you've defined your service areas, you can figure out, there are two ways that you can address that you can address the information, or actually three ways that you can address the information security portfolio. So the first way is to be able to engage work to be able to very specifically support risk reduction. So as you're looking at risk reduction, this could be either in the form of, obviously, vulnerability management and penetration tests and audit findings and external assessments and so on and so forth. And there's also the second area where, obviously, if you address, there's a lot of commoditization and disruption happening within the information security field, and so things as the adversary and business address new forms and functions in terms of requirements, you can look to be able to say, okay, are there ways where you can look at software tool rationalization, things that used to take three or four appliances are now converged into a single appliance, and so forth. And obviously there's a big move into managed services with respect to information security as well. And so that's really what I'm calling kind of this disruption with respect to commoditization. And finally, the third way is to really be able to articulate what that end zone looks like. So, and that's really what this slide is looking at. So if you're looking at the current state assessment, again, you can level it in terms of, this is a generalized, 1 through 5. You can also use CMMI or whatever kind of maturity model that you're looking to be able to address. But again, as you've already broken out those products and those services as a part of, again, we're using the CSF, but you can use any kind of framework, and you can assign a score based upon people, process, and technology. And you can say, here's where we currently are, and then through a conversation with the organization, with the stakeholders, you need to be able to look at, what does the desired state look like? So what does done look like? And this, in my experience, is typically the more difficult of the two. And so if you're looking at, so I think that most organizations can fairly accurately and completely come up with the current state. But desired state in an information security construct is a little bit more difficult, and obviously it changes. So it changes based upon those things that we talked about at the very beginning, because you've got innovation and you've got obviously remediation of technical debt and obviously the adversary changes as well. And so desired state as you're looking to be able to build this out needs to change and fluctuate and address additional requirements as the organization continues to be able to mature from an information security perspective. So it's, again, as we're looking at the benefits, it's important to be able to define the risk appetite for information security, and then again qualify the level of necessary security. So you'll never obviously be at a complete level of information security, but as you're looking at the role of information security and the ability to be able to target investments to be able to address that risk appetite, it really is important as a part of that. Again, this is just an example of something that you can consider in terms of defining whatever that target state looks like. So once you've identified that target state, it becomes easier to be able to show what that value proposition looks like. So again, progress to desired state. If you have the current state and desired state assessment, you can track back specific backlog activities to individual products and to individual service areas. And so then at the end of the year, one of the things that the panacea that I think that we're all trying to be able to get to is what is the cost of, what's my return on investment? What is the cost of information security, and what's the benefit? So if I opine $50,000 versus $500,000 versus $5 million, how does that change, or how does it adjust our risk profile, and how much safer at the end of the year are we based upon that investment? And so again, as we look at that progress towards the desired state, we can, through identifying that backlog activities and the subcategories that were affected, we can show where those controls are impacted or enhanced, and we can tie back very specifically what that investment did in terms of addressing kind of our security posture. So at the end of the year, when we have to be able to go back over to our over to our leadership and over to our management, we can say very specifically, here's how that investment very specifically addressed the target state architecture, the target state maturity associated with information security. And then here's also where the gaps that we still need to be able to invest in. So again, if we've only moved the ball, say 1 percentage point, but we still have another point or two to be able to go, that's also helpful in terms of communicating to leadership or the board executives to say, we put in X number of dollars, but again, as we've addressed our target state maturity iteratively over the course of the year, well, we're going to look for continued investment in terms of, in these areas to be able to address these potential control gaps or maturity gaps. So finally, this is obviously a change for a lot of organizations in terms of how to be able to manage information security, how to be able to, again, shift the change in paradigm from moving from project to product. But there are some preconditions in order to be able to move to an information security from product to project. And so really, I've addressed these in 4 different areas. And so again, I think that we've talked about the alignment of financing, and so it's really important to be able to have flexibility in terms of addressing additional capability, additional demand, and to be able to support any kind of gaps in alignment of financing. We need to be able to have also a robust DevOps culture. So the ability to be able to have an organization that understands the CI/CD pipeline, that understands how to be able to iterate iteratively, and to be able to affect roadmaps. Because again, as you have your cloud team, the cloud team will also have requirements that they will want to be able to effect. Again, I call it connective tissue. So you're developing that connective tissue between different lines of business within the organization, and so they're going to want to be able to address requirements, and so from an information security perspective, the ability to be able to organize work into operational build, and again, this is very important. And again, as we move into an agile construct, you need to be able to understand what work is best suited for Scrum, what work is best suited for Kanban, where is KTLO your keep the lights on type of activity or business as usual activity versus what work really is indicative of initiative or pushing the ball forward from a maturity or risk reduction perspective. And finally, I think this is the most important one, and the one that I want to be able to leave with everybody today, is really the organizationally information security needs to be seen as an element of quality. So this is information security. In order to be able to move into this model, needs to be understood not as a cost center and as a function of IT, but as a function of providing value to your end users and your customers and your clients. And if security is not viewed at this level within the organization, then the rest of these things will fall apart. And really what I'm talking about, the dimensions of quality, looking at performance, looking at features, looking at reliability and conformance and durability and serviceability and aesthetics. And so these are, and perceived quality. Again, these are kind of Gavin's 8 dimensions of quality, but I would actually add an extra level of quality to be able to say that information security should also be added as a 9th dimension of quality. Similarly to where back in the early 80s, Volvo rebranded their automobile as buy our car and our car will keep you and your family safe. Our car is safety is paramount and our #1 importance. And obviously, if your organization sees information security as a dimension of quality, as a way to be able to differentiate your product and services offerings to your clients and clientele, either because of regulatory compliance frameworks or your industry sector, then I think that your organization would probably be a good candidate moving into this product-centric view and product-centric approach of information security. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate everybody's opportunity. Appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak to you all. I know that there was a lot of conversations or a lot of things that were tossed out today. But let's move into the QA session, and I appreciate everybody's time.